Welcome back to the Untangled Mind podcast. Today we go back to our Fishbowl Series, where finding clarity in the ebb and flow of life's complexities is at the heart of our conversation. I'm Piper Harris, and in today's nurturing space, we're unfolding part 2 of our Fishbowl Series, delving into My Basis A results, a unique tool we've lovingly curated for all our clients in Untangled Mind and dynamic growth counseling and consulting services. In this episode, we'll explore my results and how this valuable compass can guide us towards personal growth, enliven our understanding, and ultimately weave the fabric of our well-being into a richer, more resilient tapestry. So take a moment to nestle in, take a deep breath, and join me and Dr. Susan Belangee as we navigate the waters of self-exploration.
The shaded area. And what I say about that when I see that is that kind of anchors her on that top side. So even though there is flexibility and creativity in things that she can tap into, because the majority of her score sits inside the shaded area, this little piece that kind of sticks out up top says, I'm probably going to come back to a place of what was my plan.
Yeah.
So when something starts to go awry in the creative process, or like, oh, that didn't lend itself to the taste of this dish like I thought it would, what do I do now? So Piper's the one that's always going to come back to, okay, what was the original recipe? What was the original plan? And, what do I need to shift? And because you have the ability to be creative, it's like, okay, I can come up with a new way of doing this. I can figure this out.
It's kind of like counseling too, right?
Yes, very much.
I mean, that makes more sense because I do like figuring out. I send my clients tons of assessments.
Yeah.
A ton of them. And I like numbers. I like data. I like to prove what we're doing is working. So I can see that with the counseling process.
Yeah.
Like I'm rooted in, okay, this is what I know it is. Like we're working with panic disorder. So that's the thing I'm rooted in. So I'm going to study the thing, but then I allow creativity within sessions. Is that accurate?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So one of the things that, that we have to keep in mind in the mental health world is, just because it looks one way and people are talking about something in session, in one way, we know that it can shift and morph and change. And so if we've got to have that awareness of, well, this worked in the last session, but it doesn't seem to be clicking today. So what can I change to? What can I shift to? And so I think that's one of the strengths for you is having your score be where it is. You can be more fluid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
very cool. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, because I love the numbers. I love the data and I do. That's my safety, right? When I don't feel good about something, like maybe I try a new technique and it just falls totally flat. I usually feel awful. But then I go back to, okay, time to study. Where did I go wrong? How do I shift this? Because I don't want that again.
Right.
So, okay.
Right.
That makes sense.
And the way that you nurture relationships. So now if we start to bring scales together,
okay.
Right. So you have a plan, you create this idea, before each session, kind of knowing what you know about your client. But then if your client comes in and like, they just had a tragedy in their family or something, just happened, you're capable to set that aside and say, no, let's tend to, this, and let me nurture kind of what you need right here, right now in this moment. And I'm okay to let my plan sit.
Let me ask you, something just came to mind about the relationship part. So back to more of a personal part. In the past, I have been like, this is what a friendship is. And if it's not the way the friendship is, I am crushed. And I try to be flexible, but I wonder if I'm not.
Well, I think that speaks a little bit to another element of the going along scale. So we've been talking about, rules, structure, plans. It's also about values and how do you define for yourself friendship? How do you define, rules that I live by, right? So we hope that everybody believes that red lights exist for a really good reason and that we're supposed to stop when we get to one.
Right.
We know that some people don't.
That's true.
So anyway, when we think about, the rules that you live by, I would say for you that one of your rules is you never want somebody to leave you or leave an interaction with you feeling like they weren't valued.
Yeah.
So when you think about the emphasis you place on that, and then the definition of friendship, if there's not the flexibility, right? So if the strength side doesn't come in and allow you that fluidity and flexibility, depending on what is going on for somebody in that moment, it may feel like this isn't working for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel unseen.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, well, I just poured into them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I still learn 10 years, 3 times. I'm still learning. And believe me, in our supervision session, she'll be like, Piper, this is showing up. She'll bring it up. I'm like, oh.
So again, we always come back to, how do we use the awareness to make sure you're using it on the strengths?
Okay.
So, all right. So the next one is called taking charge, and it measures how much of a natural born leader do you see yourself to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And higher scores, yes, you see yourself as being more of a leader. Lower scores point to having a more of a collaborative kind of a spirit in the way that you lead. Again, not that you can't step up and take charge of a situation, but if you're lower on this, it's going to take more out of you.
Okay.
And it probably is going to be like a situation that you would feel comfortable to do that in is something like, yes, I know how to achieve in this moment. I know how to get the job done in this moment. I'm willing to step into that leadership role in that instance.
Okay.
So your score was numerically a 25, but you're sitting at the top of the shaded area, and you do have another little piece outside of the shaded area. On
I'm
this
sure if
upper
you know
side.
me, you're not surprised by this.
So that anchors you in that upper side. You're not Attila the Hun. That's not my way or the highway.
I'm not yet.
So it is kind of a best of the both worlds analogy here too. So you can listen and collaborate, but you're also going to feel comfortable and feel like you have a voice to step into that. No, this is the direction we need to go.
Yeah. Okay.
And because you're going along, and if I again kind of show to the camera, this is the one we're talking about. This is the one we just finished talking about. So they're very close.
Yeah.
So the way that you lead most often is with sharing your plan. Here's my plan.
Yeah. Okay.
So again, you can lead just naturally. It's kind of the natural inclination according to this. But the way that you go about leading, how you go about leading, the two cards you play together is like, this is what I think we should do, and here's the plan.
Okay.
Right. Or here's the plan. I think it's a really good one. So you can kind of play them, almost simultaneously.
Let's talk about that. Do you feel like that with me? Let's talk about that. With my taking charge, you're going along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Tell them about that.
So yeah. So, I mean, I think that, when it comes to, for me, this is a new endeavor, right? So doing consultation work for me, is in this format and focusing on it in this way is new.
Yeah.
And so I'm very much benefiting from Piper's, no, we need to do this, and here's the plan, and this, we need to do this first. And so it's really been a blessing, because, coming out of, a therapy background for a number of years now. And I also am a professor, right? So I'm not doing the consultation stuff, or haven't in this way in quite some time. So to have the guidance be like, no, here's the checkbox. We need to do this first, and this, and this, and this has been.
But the drawback of that is, and we know this, I get a little pushy.
Well, I wouldn't say pushy. It's because there's just so much to do, right? When you launch a business, at times it's like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. That's a lot to think about. But because you've done it before, right, and that's your experience, it's like, no, this is coming from a place of, I want Susan to be successful. I want, and these are the things that I found that work, that help me be successful. And so yeah, it's not a pushy. It's, for me, it's your lifestyle interacting with my lifestyle about trying to be good enough. Am I going to be good enough? And so when I hear all the things that I need to do to potentially be good enough, it's like, oh, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I'm thinking kind of about like the, the 5 main domains for personality. What is it, like neuroses and the, so I guess what my mind goes to, am I perceived when I go in to take charge? Am I going to be perceived as arrogant? Because I feel like I get that a lot in interactions. Is that what people get from me? Because she knows I'm a weenie, y'all. I worry about people, what they think about me, but I want to take charge. I'm like, okay, but this is a really good plan. Here it is, A, B, C, and I have it all. So I don't know, how is that perceived by others?
So I would say that people see you as capable. People see you as intelligent, smart. You know what you're talking about. Because again, you kind of the 2 cards you play almost simultaneously are, here's what I think we should do, and here's the plan, and here's what's going to make us successful. Right. So the way that those two come across, particularly for those who maybe need more approval or more recognition, things like that, are gonna be like, ooh, I don't know if I measure up. I don't know. And so I think what happens is in that interaction, your lifestyle, their lifestyle, is just creating in them this, I don't know if I can compete with this. And so I think what you're feeling is some of that hesitation perhaps on their part, and you're interpreting that like, am I being too bossy?
Yeah.
Am I being too outspoken?
Yeah. Is that too much?
But I think that ultimately what's happening when we look at all of your traits together, and again, we've only covered 3.
Yeah.
So when we look at all of them together, there's other pieces here, that, and again, it's your cards and how you play them. And then now imagine playing a game with somebody else, right? And they're trying to play their strengths and their cards. And so, it may be just a mismatch, or, kind of your intention is one of kindness, giving, care. But you're not gonna, beat around the bush. You're not gonna, try to sweet talk it or fluff. I think the word you used, I'm not gonna fluff anybody.
I'm not gonna fluff anybody. We were giggling about that this week. I had a client, she was asking me about a referral for her daughter. And she was, I need someone like you. And I'm like, well, like, what do you mean? She was, well, I don't know, someone that's kind of nice. I was like, did you just say I was kind of nice? And she started howling. She's like, no, I didn't mean it that way. But I wonder if that's because she sees that scale of it. I mean, it's hilarious. And now she ends all her emails with, you're kind of nice. So it was just a funny thing, but she picked up, because I when I get safe, feel safe with a client, I am more blunt, because I think in my life, if I look back, okay, let's look back, childhood lifestyle, I perceived not knowing, like I just perceived, I don't know quite where I fit. I don't quite know where to go. And so for me, I don't want to fluff people, because I don't want them to ever wonder, who is she? Where is she coming from?
Is she sincere?
I don't. And I've actually had people say to me, you can't be that sincere. You can't be that authentic. And I'm like, okay, but again, it's just like you said, it's my interaction with their lifestyle is not meshing.
Right.
So that's interesting.
Okay. Yeah. And that's the reality, when we think about communication and where communication works or doesn't work, or who it works better with and who it doesn't, really what we're talking about is, again, you're playing a card game, and you're trying to play your cards and your strengths in a certain way, and they're trying to do the same thing. And it just, leads to misunderstandings potentially.
Yeah.
And so, again, kind of having the awareness of, this is who I am, and I bring it with me in every interaction I have. Good news, bad news.
Yeah.
Right. So then it's figuring out, like, how is my stuff interacting with somebody else's stuff and creating this issue, versus that's a really horrible human being.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about my husband. He's super high on taking charge too. So, I mean, we can really, I mean, my boys are like, you both are so stubborn. So I'm taking charge. No, I'm taking charge. No, I'm taking charge. My plan's better. So that's how he and I's lifestyles sometimes. And she knows Scott too, my husband. So the taking charge, I think we both have that at times, and it's a lot taking charge in one room.
But how do you all resolve it?
We always come back and we find compromise. Like, I like this of your plan. I like this of your plan. Or we just compromise and say, okay, we'll go with your plan. Like, it's never a brawl. It's, we figure it out. And we always go back to going along. We always go back to going along.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a good partnership.
All right, cool. So that's taking charge. So now the next one of these main 5 is the wanting recognition scale.
Yeah.
And so what this is tapping into is, how much do you seek out and need approval and recognition from others? And that's higher scores. People who are higher on this have that need. The strength that comes from that need is you treat people with warmth, kindness, care, empathy, because you're hoping to get it, right? So you kind of put out in the world what you hope to get back. As scores go down on this, it points to people who are more internally driven. Like, they don't need the pats on the back. They can do it for themselves. And so that's where Piper sits. So her score was a 39. And so that puts her kind of down toward the lower end. So the strength here again is kind of being more internally motivated. Half of her range box sits inside the shaded area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know that that can point to tapping into that upper side. But then the other half sits outside. So we're anchored on this lower end. So I would say that the strength for you, Piper, is, again, you can recognize when somebody needs that, and you can offer that to them. You can have that sense of empathy and vocalize it.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to, needing their approval or their recognition, you kind of have this sense of like, no, I know I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm good with myself. And then the drawback side of being low on this is, when you're interacting with somebody who's really needs that recognition, because you don't need it in the same way. It may not be your first thought to give it.
Oof.
So that's the potential drawback side is people could see you potentially, you're asking about the taking charge, could see you as cold, or as a little standoffish, because particularly if they are much higher on this scale, if they need the recognition and approval, and they're kind of, feeling you out to see, is this somebody who's going to give it to me? They may then say, no, she's too aggressive, or she's too hard, or she's too bossy. When in reality, it's not that.
Yeah.
It's just their need is not matching
mine. And we were talking about this before we recorded, and I'm like, wait, what? I'm low on wanting recognition. I would have sworn this was high 7 years ago. Because I think that was the last time we did this with me, is like 7 years ago. I would have sworn it was higher. So that shocked me. And as we're sitting here talking about it, I think a couple things have happened in the last few years. One, finishing my master's, I had to overcome a lot of self-doubt. I was going to a different university, and I wanted to transfer to Liberty, but they made me take statistics, and I was so scared. And all I remembered growing up was I was stupid when it came to math. I mean, like utterly stupid, and like taking me to a hypnotherapist and like throwing up before exams, like I'm dumb. And so going into statistics, I cannot tell you how afraid I was. I mean, I sobbed. My boys had helped me with algebra. Like I just, but so I went through that, and then going through the master's program, and it was so healing, because I was like, oh, I'm not stupid. It only took me 44 lots of years to get to that point. But I think that was like because I was so shocked when you said to me, I'm like, wait, no, my wanting recognition is really high. And you're like, no, it's really low. So I think that was kind of the thing that shifted over the years, is that I finally accepted I'm not stupid. And it just literally, it was a lifelong belief. And so it's kind of funny. I think the other aspect of it, maybe, and you can speak to this too, is my faith. Is that I'm so firmly rooted in my faith now that I'm like, okay, like I've told her, this is my mission. I don't have a choice. This is what I do, and I love it. So is that part of, do you think that's it, or?
Well, I think, again, it comes down to what is your perception? What makes sense to you, right? Yeah. So that's something to know about Adlerian psychology. So when you work with somebody who uses Adlerian psychology in their work, it all comes back to the client's perception. That's what matters most. So, I may know a lot about this inventory and what I think it says, but ultimately what matters more is what Piper's perception is. And again, kind of what anybody who takes it and goes through this process, what their perception is. And so for you, if you think that your groundedness, your sense of being internally driven has faith as a component, then of course it does. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, the strength for you is, I know I'm good. I know I'm okay. Yeah. I know I'll be okay. And then, the drawback side is, perhaps when you're left with an interaction and you're kind of like, I'm not sure what happened there. Okay. I'm not sure what to make of that. I'm not sure, kind of if that was someone who now feels like I'm not kind, right? Or I'm kind of nice.
I'm kind of nice. And what's funny? I'm thinking about my youngest son. He'll say to me, I need my mom right now. Oh. He'll vocalize. And I'm like, I am your mom. He's like, no, I need my mom. And that kid, boy, he is my kid. He is so perceptive, and he's just whap. So he feels that. And I think at times my husband feels it, and he'll be like, hey, can we approach me in a different way? I need a little bit more of the softness. So that's making me think about personal interactions that definitely, yeah. Okay. I can see that. Yep.
So again, you do have that piece of the scale that sits in the shaded area, right? So maybe kind of because your planning is so strong and your take charges is strong. And again, that's kind of where you spend a lot of your time is, particularly in work and managing the house, and not that you do that alone. Scott, certainly, it's a collaborative effort for all of you. But I think what they're telling you is, plans aside, can I just have, can I just have the love? Can I just have the hug? Can I just have the,
and I'm like, no, we need to wash the dust, the floorboards. We need to do this. We need to do, so yeah. We got that Mary Martha thing going on. Yeah. It's a Mary Martha thing. All right.
Yes. All right. So, the last one of
very interesting
of these first 5 is called the Being Cautious scale. And what this is measuring is how much did you perceive life growing up to be challenging, for there to be, some conflict. And that's higher scores compared to people who are lower on this, whose perception is, no, life, I knew who to trust. Life was predictable. I knew what was going to happen next. And so, where your score sits is fully outside on the higher side of the shaded area. And so what that means to me is that your perception of childhood was like, no, I didn't know, I wasn't sure. And so the strength that comes for people who experience that, and it could be divorce, it could be moving a lot, it could be, just general, conflict among the adults in the home. It could also be alcoholism. It could also be neglect, abuse. I mean, so it kind of runs the gamut. But what happens, or what it always comes back to, is, again, what was your perception of it? And the interesting thing is, and I did consultation with a set of sisters at 2 different times, and same parents,
right?
Same household, but their perceptions about
so different
were very, very different. So somebody was high on this and somebody was low on this. And some of that just spoke to, like, one was an older, and then some years had passed, the family got a little more stable, and then the other one came along. And so the younger was like, life was good. And the older one was like, life sucked. And so it just, again, it just comes down to perception and kind of the interactions of all those factors that create the personality traits. So, but anyway, back to Piper. So Piper, kind of had this sense that life was unpredictable. So the strength that comes is, I got to watch, I got to observe. So Piper is very, very observant. The drawback side to being high is you could also end up being hypervigilant. You could convince yourself or be looking for that next shoe to drop.
Anxiety. There's my friend anxiety.
Yes. Yeah. So the strength that comes from being lower is, you perceive like it's going to be okay. Life's going to work out. The drawback side, when you have that belief or that perception, is you can be hit blindsided and then not know what to do. Right. Like, I wasn't anticipating this, now I'm completely, beside myself, don't know what to do.
So with this being cautious, she and I kind of debriefed a little bit before we did this, and I'm not surprised. I mean, again, I guess I was surprised with the wanting recognition and being cautious, but the more we talked about it, it makes sense. So my perception growing up was, I was unwelcome. My perception was my brother was the loved one. And again, this is childhood perceptions, right? So mom, dad, I'm not being mean. But so, and I always felt like I didn't fit. I was a very fat child, with the name Piper. I wore headgear, all of the things that set our personality. So I didn't feel like I fit. I got picked on, I got bullied a lot. And so I can see that. And I didn't feel like I could necessarily go home and express, this is what's happening. I grew up in a home where it was like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It wasn't, there wasn't I needed the love and affection, which is kind of interesting how I'm showing up there. Shoot. Okay. So now I'm saying that as I talk out loud. So I'm still doing the same stuff.
Well, I think what you learned was I got to handle my stuff.
Yeah.
I got to handle this myself.
Yeah.
Right. And so that independent streak,
yeah,
that comes through in the wanting recognition, that comes through and here's the plan we're going to create, that comes through and let me watch and observe and figure out, like, is there somebody safe here I can talk to?
Yeah.
Right. Or do I need to be, the belonging and social interest, kind of keep
by
myself. So again, you're speaking to the interplay now. You're speaking to how these kind of inform and influence each other, over, seconds.
Yeah.
Right. It can happen like that. So yeah. So because this is your highest, and this is something else that comes into the interpretation. We talk about what was your highest score on this chart of these main 5 and what was your lowest. So Piper's highest is the being cautious. So she meets the world with, let me watch, let me observe, let me see kind of where I need to be. And so Piper's one of those people that if something's off for you, she knows it and she'd be like, what's wrong? What's going on? There's something not right here for you. What is it? And I think from that ties right and beautifully with the people in your life that you care about,
Yeah.
Right. So you're observing and you're watching, and because you've nurtured that relationship and the one-on-one interactions, you sense it.
Yeah.
Right. So there's the strength side. Now think about your clients.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they come in from one session to the next and something is a little off, you're going to notice it.
Yeah. I can see it on them.
And so then that speaks right to that introverted nature. Okay, let's talk about that. And you attend to them. And so again, it's not that you're not. If we think about your wanting recognition, you can be empathetic and compassionate and caring, and that comes through because of the one-on-one interaction and because of what you're observing in them.
Okay. What I can say too, like I said, my anxiety, and she's known me for a long time. I have had to work on my anxiety because of that. And I can feel it if I, especially a group of people, we're back to that. I'm watching every single person. And it's not to say that I get it right every time. I might be perceiving, like, I know she and I've had interactions with other people in the community. I'm like, did you see that? Like, they thought I was a moron. She's like, no, that's not what I got at all. I'm like, no, that's what it was. But I get very anxious because then I go back to, do they like me? What are they thinking of me? Did I have food in my teeth? Like what's wrong? And then my anxiety, goes through the roof. The other thing, it's being able to see the things. Sometimes I'm like, I really wish I could turn this off. I know it's a gift. You've told me, you're like, Piper, this is a good thing. But at times, it can be very painful. And then I go down the anxiety and I'm not being logical at all, And so,
that's what I call the domino effect, right? So when you're highest, again, think about 2 sides of the same coin. So it's the strength you use most often. And so when it stops working or when it's ending up on the drawback side, then it creates this cascade of turning all the other cards over, turning all the other coins over. And then you're like, you're finding yourself retreating.
Yes.
And you're like, I don't understand why I feel the need to retreat right now. And, the plans seem to kind of go out the window and we can't figure out what to do next. And then, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Right. And so then it's like all of those strengths that had been, showing up for you then just turn over.
Yeah.
And so then what we need to figure out is how do we then flip them back? How do we get back to the strength side? And so most of the time what we can look to is the lowest as the catalyst to get us back to the strength side.
Okay.
And so your lowest is that wanting recognition score. And so what you come back to eventually is the, okay, I'm good. I know I'm good in God's eyes. Yes. I know I'm, my heart was in the right place. Right. And then the self-talk starts
and then I go to planning.
And then we jump back quickly to like, okay, well here, I've lost time. Let's let's get back to it.
Okay.
So
that makes sense. Interesting. All right.
So, so those are the main 5. And so now are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
It's like,
I'm doing good.
Take a break. So now we have I'm going to show you this side. So we've been talking about these top 5 that got plotted on the chart. These 5 down here are supplemental. They serve a slightly different purpose. There's still for 4 of them strengths and drawback sides associated. But when it comes to the ones that you use most often, it's going to be those first 5.
Okay.
So the next 2 we're going to talk about are the H scale, which stands for harshness, and the S scale, which stands for softness. So we have harshness and softness. And these were designed by the test makers to be kind of this inverse relationship. If one is high, the other's low, and vice versa.
Okay.
And some of that was, in terms of a checks and balances, like how is somebody answering this? Are they answering it truthfully? Are they answering it in a way that makes sense? And so, you would not expect somebody to be high on both.
Right.
Because then it's like, that doesn't quite make sense, or low on both. So people can meet in the middle, right? And kind of have scores be, close in terms of the middle, but you wouldn't expect both high or both low.
Okay.
So your H score, really what H is measuring is how bad was it growing up? So it kind of connects to that being cautious scale.
Okay.
And so you're at a 14. The high cutoff for this is an 18.
Okay.
So your score's kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. So even though you're being cautious is higher, to not meet that high cutoff, I think is okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And so then from there, we jump to the softness and we look at softness. And this is a scale that could be as high as like 25 and could be as low as 5, and you're at 12.
Okay. So in the middle.
So again, kind of here in the middle. So that's what we see is, for Piper, the scores kind of being here in this middle area. When I see people who are higher on being cautious like Piper, and a middle of the road softness, softness measures optimism. So it's tapping into how optimistic are you? And so it makes sense that if somebody had a really tough childhood and their perception of childhood was hard, and I didn't know who to trust, they're likely not going to be real high on optimism. Piper, though, is in the middle. So she's not low like we might anticipate.
Yeah.
So then what I point to with that is there's a strength here that for many people kind of sits to the side, and we use it as the last resort.
Optimism? So I'm negative?
Well, no, it's not that you're negative. It's that it's one of those, you're going to try to play the other cards first.
Okay. Got it.
And so because it's not a 25, you're not like, this sucks, but it's going to be awesome in a minute.
Yeah.
So softness has this unique little piece about, is it going to be okay? And so your belief is yes. It's just not the first card you play.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
So again, it comes out of that interaction of, and the strength of watching and observing. I think the way that you're going to be okay, the way it shows up first more is in that wanting recognition.
Okay.
Right? Being able to do this for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's going to be okay because I'm okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And as you said, there's faith in here too.
Yeah. Faith is everything in my life. Okay.
So I think faith shows up also for some people. They talk about it more in terms of being optimistic. Well, I know God's got it.
Okay.
And so again, so there may be components of that, of faith for you in this one.
Yeah.
But it probably gets used more for you as an assurance of like, I'm okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would put that in the wanting recognition more so than your softness.
Okay.
Does that make
sense?
sense?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. So aside from that, there's not a whole lot more that H gives us or that S gives us.
So, and what does H look at?
H, how bad was it?
Okay. That's
growing
right.
up? So there's not really a strength that,
Yeah.
that comes through that. It really,
You're kind of validating the other scales.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's its purpose. H and S kind of have this, but S by itself has this unique little piece about optimism.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. So then the next scale we'll talk about is called the entitlement scale. High scores on this point to people who believe and perceive they had special attention, special treatment growing up. And then scores that are lower on this point to like, well, no, I don't think I got that. And it's either kind of a wondering, or it's just matter of fact, yeah, that's the way life was. Or for some people, it could even be like a little chip on their shoulder. Yeah, and a little bitter about it.
Yeah.
So high scores would be like greater than 21. Low scores are less than 12, and Piper's score is less than 12. She's at a 9. And so I would start by saying that and being on the lower end, the strength that comes from that is, well, because I didn't feel special or get that attention, I know that, life is what I'm going to make of it.
Yeah.
And so
totally.
I have a
Totally.
very realistic view that, I get out of it what I put into it.
Yep.
So that's the strength side. The drawback side then is when good things happen, do you believe they're for you? Do you doubt it?
You answer that.
So that's the drawback side, is when you're not used to getting good things or having good things happen, then when they do happen, it's like, this isn't for me.
Is
and it's
that
kind of pushing away.
Is that the crux of people pleasing? Like, well, or the constant striving? Is that what that is? Because I find, you know that about me. I and everybody in my life's like, pump the brake. So is that how that shows up with like my striving? Because I'm like, well, it's not, I didn't really do good enough. Is that what that is?
I think it comes back to, I think that what you're talking about anchors more in the going along.
Okay.
And did I get the expectations right? Did I, and again, think about being cautious. Did I read the situation correctly? Did I make the plan to meet the demand? Is it right? So you kind of come back to, is my plan good enough? Is my plan good enough?
Okay.
Versus, am I good enough?
Oh, okay.
So I think the am I good enough kind of finds its way in there in terms of self-talk.
Yeah.
But from a distinct trait standpoint, there's the way entitlement shows up is more, it is what it is.
Okay. Okay. So I roll with the punches. So
yeah, so you've learned, and so being cautious, right? So not sure what's going to come next. So I got to watch, I got to observe. And then because in your mind, your perception of childhood was like, well, anything good is for my brother.
Right.
So I'm just not going to expect.
Computer. He got the,
yeah, I'm just not going to expect. Okay. And then I'm not disappointed.
That's very true. And that is how I approach most of my interactions.
Right.
Because that's how I guard myself. Got it.
So that's how you use these cards, right? Okay. It's like, let me, and that's why it might take you a moment when something good happens to be like, wait, is that really?
Is that why I worry, when's the shoe going to drop?
That's the being cautious.
Okay. That's being cautious. Okay.
But, I think, as we think about, as you were waiting to hear about your LAPC coming through, is this good thing going to happen? Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah, it was a mess. That was a big mess. She's like, Piper, it's coming. I'm like, it's not coming. It's not coming.
Yeah. So again, that's where, that doomsday, being cautious scale tips the dominoes over.
Chicken Little. I'm Chicken Little. Yeah. Turned into Chicken Little. Okay.
But so again, if we think about, the strength side of, I can take a realistic view.
Yeah.
I don't need special attention. I don't need to be the center of the audience. I don't need that. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's, the strength side is like, no, life is going to give us, and we got to make, if it gives us lemons, we got to figure out how we're going to make lemonade. And here's my plan
to do it
for how I'm going to make the lemonade.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Huh. It's so funny, the word entitlement.
Yeah.
I mean, so some of these scales, like to me, because